Welcome to EnglishPass Podcast, brought to you from our local studio in Calgary. I'm your host, Samantha, and today we're diving into an exciting topic: buying a house in Canada. Whether you're a beginner or intermediate learner, in this podcast, we're helping you level up your English listening and reading skills. And before we get started, let me tell you that the sponsor of this episode is TypeFit, keyboard typing practice and learning service. Today, we're exploring something really interesting: buying a house in Canada. This is a wonderful subject for English learners because it covers a lot of practical vocabulary and real-world situations. So let's dive right in. Buying a house in Canada is often described as the cornerstone of the Canadian dream, representing a sense of belonging and a long-term investment in one's future. At its most basic level, the process involves finding a property, securing a specialized loan from a bank, and completing a legal transfer of ownership. However, because Canada is such a vast country with diverse economic landscapes, the experience of buying a home can vary wildly depending on whether you are looking at a glass tower in Toronto or a cozy bungalow in the prairies. To understand how this works, we must first look at the financial foundation of any home purchase: the down payment. In Canada, a down payment is the initial amount of money you pay upfront for a house. It is not part of your loan, but rather your own savings. If the house costs less than $500,000, the minimum down payment is 5%. If the house is more expensive, the percentage increases. This initial hurdle is often the most difficult for young people to overcome, as it requires years of disciplined saving. Imagine a young couple in Edmonton, Alberta, named Sarah and David. They have been living in a small apartment for 3 years, cutting back on vacations and dining out to save $30,000. For them, Edmonton's relatively affordable market means that $30,000 is more than enough to cover the 5% down payment on a comfortable 3-bedroom house. This is a classic example of how regional affordability dictates the buying experience. In contrast, a buyer in Vancouver might need hundreds of thousands of dollars just to meet the minimum requirements for a similar home. Once the savings are in place, the next step is to obtain a mortgage. A mortgage is a legal agreement in which a bank or lender gives you money to buy a house, and you agree to pay it back with interest over several decades. One of the most important concepts to understand here is amortization, which refers to the total length of time it will take to pay off the mortgage in full. In Canada, the most common amortization period is 25 years. While you might have a 25-year plan, your actual contract with the bank, called the mortgage term, usually only lasts between 3 and 5 years. When that term ends, you have to renew your mortgage at the current interest rates. This can be a bit of a gamble. If interest rates have gone up during those 5 years, your monthly payments will also increase. Consider the case of Marco, a tech worker in Toronto who bought a condominium in 2019 when interest rates were very low. When his term came up for renewal in 2024, he found that the rates had doubled. Because he had a good salary, he could afford the change, but it forced him to rethink his budget for things like travel and entertainment. This highlights a common nuance in the Canadian market. The house you buy today might cost you more or less in 5 years, depending on the national economy. Before you even start looking at houses with a real estate agent, most experts recommend getting a pre-approval. This is a letter from a bank stating exactly how much money they are willing to lend you. It gives you a clear budget and shows sellers that you are a serious buyer. In the past, buying a house was often a slow and steady process, but in recent decades, it has become much more competitive. Have you ever heard of a bidding war? This happens when multiple people want the same house and keep offering higher and higher prices to win. For example, in a popular neighborhood in Montreal, a small house might be listed for $600,000. However, because the neighborhood is so desirable, 10 different families might make an offer at the same time. The house might eventually sell for $700,000, far above the asking price. This is why having a pre-approval is so critical. Without it, you cannot act fast enough to compete in these hot markets. The role of a real estate agent or realtor is another vital part of the Canadian experience. Unlike some countries where the buyer pays their agent a fee, in Canada, the seller usually pays the commission for both their own agent and the buyer's agent. This makes it very attractive for first-time buyers to seek professional help. A good agent will guide you through the Home Buyer's Plan, which is a federal program that allows you to withdraw money from your Registered Retirement Savings Plan, RRSP, tax-free to buy your first home. Let's look at the Singh family in Brampton, Ontario. They used this program to take $35,000 out of their retirement savings to help with their down payment. Without this government incentive, they might have had to wait another 4 years to enter the market. This reflects a cultural note about Canada. The government generally tries to encourage homeownership through various tax breaks and incentives because it is believed to create more stable communities. However, the price of the house isn't the only cost you have to worry about. There are also closing costs, which are the various fees and expenses you must pay when the ownership of the property is officially transferred to you. These include legal fees for a lawyer to check the title of the property, land transfer taxes, and home inspection fees. A home inspection is a crucial step where a professional examines the house for hidden problems like a leaky roof or faulty wiring. Imagine Alina, who found a beautiful older home in Halifax, Nova Scotia. She loved the character of the house, but the inspector discovered that the foundation was cracking, a problem that would cost $50,000 to fix. Because Alina had included a condition in her offer that the house must pass an inspection, she was able to walk away from the deal without losing any money. This is a perfect example of why buyers must be careful and not let their emotions cloud their judgment during the excitement of the purchase. There is also a common misconception that once you own a house, the financial stress is over. In reality, homeowners in Canada are responsible for property taxes, which are paid to the local city government to fund schools, roads, and police services. You also have to build equity. Equity is the difference between the market value of your home and the amount you still owe on your mortgage. If your house is worth $800,000 and your mortgage is $500,000, you have $300,000 in equity. This is essentially your wealth. Over time, as you pay down the loan and the value of the house rises, your equity grows. This is why many Canadians view their home as their primary savings account. Historically, following World War II, the Canadian government created the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation, CMHC, to help citizens find affordable housing. This organization still exists today and provides mortgage insurance, which allows people with smaller down payments to still get a loan from a bank. It is a unique part of the Canadian system that provides a safety net for lenders while helping buyers get into the market sooner. As we move toward more complex ideas, we must consider the rules for foreign buyers. In recent years, Canada has introduced a temporary ban on many non-Canadians buying residential property to help cool down rising prices and ensure there are enough homes for people living and working in the country. This means that if you are a newcomer, you must carefully check your residency status before starting your search. For instance, a skilled worker who just arrived in Vancouver on a temporary permit might need to wait until they receive their permanent residency before they can legally purchase a home. This policy shows how housing in Canada is not just a personal matter, but a significant political issue. The government constantly adjusts rules to balance the needs of the economy with the needs of individual families. Finally, consider the idea of a foreclosure. This is a sad but important reality to understand. If a homeowner stops making their mortgage payments, the bank can take legal action to seize the house and sell it to recover the lost money. While this is relatively rare in Canada compared to some other countries, it serves as a reminder that a mortgage is a serious legal obligation. Whether you are buying a rural farmhouse in Manitoba or a modern townhouse in Ottawa, the steps are the same. Save your money, understand your mortgage, inspect the property, and prepare for the ongoing costs of ownership. It is a long and sometimes stressful journey, but for many, the feeling of turning a key in their own front door makes every bit of effort worth it. Progressing from a renter to an owner is a transition that changes your financial life and your connection to your community, making it one of the most significant things you will ever do in Canada. And that's all for today's episode of EnglishPass Podcast. I hope you found this helpful. Remember to practice what you've learned and don't be afraid to make mistakes. That's how we improve. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe and join us next time. Let me remind you that the sponsor of the episode is TypeFit, and I suggest to check the link at the description. I'm Samantha, and I'm excited to be your host for many more fascinating episodes to come. Until then, keep learning and keep growing. Goodbye.